Well, welcome back, John. We've obviously spoken with you before, haven't we? And we spoke about a lot of things, genetic engineering, the gene technology bill. But we want to talk today a little bit more about brands and Brand New Zealand more specifically. So people know you as the GE3 spokesperson, but you've also worked with a lot of major New Zealand companies as a market researcher as well. So could you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, as you say, as well as doing the whole G3 New Zealand kind of campaign for quite a few years, I've been working in market research. And some of your listeners may have heard of the company I used to work for many years called Colmar Brunton. Now, Colmar Brunton was a well-established Kiwi research company. It no longer exists. You won't hear that brand anymore, taken over by another company globally. But for many years, I was like working with these leading New Zealand companies, Air New Zealand, University of Auckland, AA Insurance, a whole lot of different companies that were very Kiwi, many of them, but certainly wanted to know what customers wanted from those brands and how to serve their customers better. I mean, that was certainly where I was focusing my work. And so I've come across many leading companies. And every company, I mean, is a brand, and we can talk about what a brand is and how New Zealand can be a brand. But basically, I was an expert in engaging with the consumer and actually in internal organizations. You know, there's your brand lives as a culture within an organization, as well as what's on the label or on the advertising for your company into the public sphere.
What is the main thing most people are trying to get out of market research, out of curiosity?
Oh, it varies. And to be honest, there is an issue whereby, you know, you can do market research to influence people, and you can do market research to discover what customers want. And sometimes it's a bit of both. But it's when companies try and abuse their customer or misuse their customer or exploit their customer. There was this famous saying a few years ago by the former head of telecom at the time. And she said, oh, you know, we're using confusion marketing to get our brands across, or to get to sell people certain plans actually on their phones. And confusion marketing is certainly a technique that people can use. You know, "Oh, what do you mean by that? Here, this is what you want." That goes on. But the branding at its best is about authenticity. It's about listening to what your market and your customers want, and then making sure you live up to that, and not just seem to be living up to it, but actually having it in your heart as an organization. And, you know, I mean, to be honest, let's be clear. Brands in the kind of academic kind of lens, brands are like people. They've got values, they've got behaviors, they've got kind of personalities, and getting that brand right. And as I say, getting that brand right with authenticity, with, you know, being genuine about who you are, why your company gets up in the morning to fight the fights, you know, to sell you shampoo or to sell you your milk or to do whatever they're doing, why your staff are doing that. Bringing people together around a brand vision is kind of what marketing and branding is all about, and has been for many years. And today it's even gone further, because countries are brands, and you know, and we'll go on to talk about Brand New Zealand and what that actually means, and how that benefits New Zealand economically.
And you once worked with Air New Zealand, and you actually got the opportunity to present to Christopher Luxon.
I did. It was a few years ago, and Chris was at the head of the company at Air New Zealand, and you know, obviously I can't go into the details of what was being discussed, but it was about their brand. It was about how staff, you know, Air New Zealanders within the company were living up to the brand values. So they've got specific brand values, which I'm sure are confidential, but you can probably guess what they are to some extent. It's like being nice to your customers, for example, but also being nice to yourselves within Air New Zealand. Anyway, so I had the privilege of presenting to him and the exec team quite a few years ago now. But I guess since then, I'm thinking, well, hang on, there is this reputation that Christopher Luxon has as a branding expert, and well, at least as a marketer. And I guess I've got some alarm bells going over the recent times, because I can see, and we'll go on to talk about this, but the gene technology bill, which allows more genetic engineering in New Zealand, is a kind of threat to our brand. And Christopher, why would you do that? But also more recently, I don't know whether you knew about this, but Fonterra have decided, and they've got their farmers to vote for it. So it's talking about turkeys voting for an early Christmas. They've persuaded the New Zealand farmers in Fonterra to sell their they're consumer brands because they're hard to manage and it's really hard to sell New Zealand products overseas, and they want to just be a supplier of, high top quality ingredients without a front facing brand like Mainland and like Anchor. So they're selling them off. Now, I think that's a very, very, very bad idea. I'm sad for the farmers that they've been persuaded to take the money and sell their shop window to the world, because that's what brands are. Brands are your message, your connection to your customer. So if you haven't got control over your brands, you're kind of reliant on somebody else to do that, and that's, I think, giving away a lot of our power for Brand New Zealand. So basically, Fonterra selling off their bit of Brand New Zealand to a French company. Luckily, Brand New Zealand is much bigger than Fonterra, but it's a shame that they think they can't get any benefit out of it and are getting rid of it. And I would have liked to have seen Christopher Luxon saying, "Hey guys, don't sell your New Zealand brands."
Well, yeah, and what's the justification for that? Is then that they're struggling to sell them overseas? I would have thought it would have been the opposite.
Well, it's very funny. I mean, I don't believe them, to be honest. If I was in that boardroom and they were saying, "Oh, we only make a third of our profit out of our brands, and they're hard to run, and we can make much more money out of this section of the business," I would have said, "Okay, well, look, guys, why don't you have a competition? Why don't we aim to increase the amount of profit from our brands up to 50% and have a strategy to take it to the world?" Go direct. A lot of New Zealand brands are now going direct to the world. In fact, a lot of brands around the world are going direct to their customers through the internet. And so there's an opportunity still for New Zealand brands to do that. It's just that Fonterra have decided to sell their brand, so they ain't got anything to manage globally. It's a very strange, sad decision. I do wonder about who benefits from it, who at the top of the exec is really pushing this. But the farmers have bought it, so more fool them, but that's what they've done. So yeah, Winston Peters from New Zealand First, he came out very clearly saying they shouldn't be selling it. And to be honest, let's talk about this. And let's talk about Brand New Zealand, what it is and who owns it. But to be honest, they don't actually own what they're selling. I mean, they do literally on paper. Legally, they do own those brands. But there's a whole theory about branding which says, actually, you know who owns the brand? The consumer. It's this that they own the brand in their hearts and in their shelves in their home. By having that brand in there, they're kind of buying into it. Now, they don't own it, of course, but they kind of, the touchstone of branding is listen to your customers. Put your customers at the heart of your endeavour. Respect them and serve them, and you won't go wrong.
Okay, and you once told me you wanted to debate with Christopher Luxon. Is that right?
Well, look, I would love to have a debate about Brand New Zealand with Christopher, because, as I say, from what the government's been doing, I mean, take Fast Track, opening up a mine. I can't argue the benefits pro and against the mine, but I can tell you the impression globally of allowing mining in conservation areas. People would be very surprised that New Zealand does this. They would say, "Oh, hang on, I thought New Zealand really cared about its environment. That's why we come and visit you. That's why we buy your products." Everyone says New Zealand cares about the environment. So what's going on when you're mining in your national conservation estate? And the answer is, well, it's about money, guys. And I think that kind of whole trajectory that the government currently seems to be on, which is taking away those protections for nature to try and get the business thing going, to try and get investors mining, building stuff. It's a very dangerous path when you compromise your actual values and your brand values, I'd argue, for Brand New Zealand, to try and get the money in. You'll lose the thing that you've already got. There's a real risk, and especially around the gene technology bill, which we'll talk about later, but around anything that takes away those protections of what we trade on, which is clean, green, safe. So if you take away a safety pillar, for example, like traceability of food or labelling of it so people have a choice, that's taking away a pillar of Brand New Zealand, which is underpinning this impression of being safe and natural and ethical. So anything that we do, especially when it hits the global touch points, is either good for our brand or undermines our brand. And at the moment, we're at risk of undermining Brand New Zealand. I would say that both in the sale of the Fonterra brands, in the fast track of a whole lot of stuff that kind of undermines both community but also those environmental protections, and most notably the whole gene technology bill. Because let's really be clear about that. We've got no genetic engineered food products being produced in New Zealand, certainly not grown. There's a little bit of animal feed coming in. But we've, by default, I guess, because there's never been a ban on GE in New Zealand, they could have applied to do something. And there have been trials, which we can talk about. In fact, the trials are a problem. They were very much undermining brand New Zealand because of the animal cruelty involved in some of those animal trials, which again is not a good thing for brand reputation. But I would say that the gene technology bill and its thrust is really a threat to brand New Zealand and what we've got now, which is a kind of clean, green, safe, that 100% pure. I know we're not 100% pure, guys. I know we're not 100% pure. I know we're not 100% pure. But it's magic in terms of an aspiration. And in many ways, when people are buying into the New Zealand brand, there's an aspirational thing. It's like the world should be. It shouldn't be all destroyed and overwhelmed by contamination and pollution. It needs to be natural. And people look at New Zealand and see that and say, oh, that looks nice.
Yeah, we've got a lot to protect, and we shouldn't allow a further erosion of that. Despite having nitrate in the waters and all these things, they are debatable, but there's still a lot to protect, right?
Exactly.
We've got a food system that is guaranteed, is trusted, is natural.
Well, I think there was a National Party post the other day saying, I think our primary experts reached 63 billion or something like that this year. And it's like, hey, guys, yes. And that's without genetic engineering. You're saying we need this to fix up climate change or to do this or that. But we've got something very successful in New Zealand that needs to be protected and valued. And at the moment, they're not valuing the GE-free advantage. I mean, let's be really clear. There's been no economic analysis of the implications of the gene technology bill. Now, number one, you think, well, hang on, where's David Seymour when you want him? Hang on, we've got those regulations, standards, and we've got to have some economic... Forget that. They're not. Poor old David's very silent on the gene technology bill, thinks it's great, I think. He really has not looked at the fact that there's no economic analysis. If there was an economic analysis, it might be able to put some numbers behind what the GE export value is. Sorry, the GE-free export value is. I mean, brands, you talk about brands having assets, and one of our assets is being clean and green, and this impression of natural, this impression of purer than the other lot sort of thing overseas. But for New Zealand and brand New Zealand, the GE-free thing was estimated to be about between 10 and $20 billion per year in added value for our exports. Now, that number is very, very uncertain. The people who did it were economic experts, but they said the data isn't there, or we need to get more data to actually understand what we've got and what we might be losing with the gene technology bill. And I think that's right. I believe we've got $1 billion asset as being non-GMO. The market for non-GMO food is growing at about 12.2% a year annually, globally. Double-digit growth for a market globally in places that we're targeting like China and India for non-GMO, GE-free food. That's really what we've got to protect, because that's what people are buying into, and that's where the market is going. So again, the debate with Christopher about, brand New Zealand is, how do we manage brand New Zealand to find that middle path? Because I do, I'm not against genetic engineering, innately. I think it needs to be regulated and controlled, kept inside the lab, used ethically, use it for medicine. Like, a lot of people who are diabetics are using insulin that comes from a GE process. That's inside, that's contained, it's being used for sick people. And I think, the whole medical uses, not enforced medical uses like a vaccine, but medical uses that are being developed to help people, I think, can be done ethically and contained. Once it's outside the lab, then we get to those issues that are about brand protection. And as I said, in a way that Fonterra farmers are selling their bit of brand New Zealand off, but everybody who produces anything in New Zealand, and certainly if they're marketing it to the world, is benefiting from the aura of brand New Zealand. And so, we can talk about what that aura involves, but it involves things like fair play, punching above our weight, being a little bit smart, not so smart as to release genetic engineered crops into our fields, which we've been smart enough not to do, but smart enough to have Zespri introducing, golden kiwi fruit, the red kiwi fruit, all naturally bred, not genetically engineered, not gene edited, that's smart. That's listening to the market and then meeting the market need. So again, this whole gene technology thing. I mean, Zespri have been saying, "Oh, maybe we'll go into gene editing." Well, maybe you won't, because if you do, you need to be open and transparent about it for your customers. But at the moment, customers are thinking you're GE free, and you should stay that way. That's my view.
Well, my view is if you're running the country or the business of New Zealand, you pay attention to where the market is going, and it's clearly going in favour of non-GMO, organic, transparent food, less tampered with food.
Correct. That's what we got, guys. That's what, roll up. New Zealand has got a reputation for natural, safe, because it's very much traced, food that is, and not to mention like the vision for the future where it can be more natural, because we have to recognize that we have got some problems in the environment, but again, it's relative to, people in China are buying our products because they really don't feel confident buying locally produced food, which may be contaminated in the water, may be contaminated through the system. And there have been scares. Again, we haven't had the scares that even the UK people have had. Mad cow disease, which was years ago now, but was a result of intensive farming where the cows ended up eating the remains of other cows and passing on a prion disease, and then entering the blood system of the whole country. Now, if you come from the UK, or if you were in the UK for certain years, until recently you weren't even allowed to give blood, because the mad cow disease prions may still have been in the system of you. So they made those mistakes, and that's why people like in Britain look to clean, safe products from New Zealand. Not exclusively, but there's something about, as you say, people want safe, natural food. They can see the tinkering that's gone on. They can see the ultra-processed foods are kind of killing people. Not that we haven't got those here in New Zealand. I mean, I'm sure companies are producing them too, but it's about living up to what customer wants. And at the moment, we're delivering that. I mean, I think the number was $63 billion of exports from our primary industry. They're not perfect. Yes, they should be called out about polluting the waterways. But directionally, we've got an opportunity to keep serving that need for safe, natural food. And gene editing is not seen as natural. Consumers do see it as genetic engineering, and they prefer it not to be in the food system.
Yeah, me and you both. So are you a bit alarmed about this decision then? Because, I mean, you've got politicians here who are clearly either misinformed on the issue and the risks and the impacts to the brand of New Zealand and the story that we tell the world and how we export to the world. What do you make of that then, that decision?
Well, I'm not sure what decision you mean. You mean the decision to release genetic engineering?
Yeah, well, it's completely ignoring this opportunity, this point of difference that we have already. You're completely ignoring that. I watched an interview with Chris Luxon when he was on Jack Tame, I think it was about 2 years ago now, and he said, I cannot think of any contamination.
Yeah, and there's no risk.
Of crops, and there's no risks.
I saw
and
that.
Which is either he's lying or he's been misled.
I mean, to be fair, I did see that interview. It was about a year and more ago, and I think he's just not aware, which is my problem. He's a brand. I mean, okay, he is not the brand manager of Brand New Zealand. He's the Prime Minister. I mean, in a way, I've been advocating for Brand New Zealand. I did a presentation to the Select Committee on the Gene Technology Bill for Brand New Zealand, and I hope people will look it up, because it talks about this whole issue from a branding point of view. And so, yeah, I think he's misled, he's out of touch, or he just doesn't know enough about Brand New Zealand to defend it. So that's the big mistake. But at the end of the day, he is a money guy. And so you'd think that, as I say, where's David Seymour's regulatory standards bill? This bill has had no economic analysis. And my problem is that the economic analysis might show that our GE-free advantage is worth $20 billion a year. So why would you even risk that when you haven't even validated that number? I think it might be more in the future too. That's what the estimate now, between $10 and $20 billion asset by this one study. Let's do other studies. But I can tell you now, whatever that figure is today, it might be 10, it might be 20, maybe more. In 10 years' time, the advantage in the marketplace for New Zealand to have clean, safe, traceable, pure, 100% if you can, non-GMO food will be much higher than it is today. It's a market opportunity moving forward, a growth opportunity, 12.2% compound annual growth till 2032 all over the world, including China and India and America and the Middle East, where we are marketing our products. Sorry to sound like a robot, but this is a no-brainer. This is a no-brainer. We've got to protect the non-GMO, the GE-free advantage. And I'm hoping that's what New Zealand First are doing. They've said they won't support the bill as it stands today, the gene technology bill. They want to change it. They want to fix it. Now, some people say, hang on, you can't fix it. It's so fundamentally a sellout to the biotechnology industry that kind of wrote this bill that you'd have to fix it a lot. Now, look, I have a lot of sympathy with that. It can't be fixed. We'd probably be better off keeping the regulations we've got now, which is called the Hazardous Substances and New Organisms Act, which has served us pretty well. It's kept New Zealand as GE-free as possible, despite it being open to applications for release. There's brands have pillars, and if you talk about different brands, you can say, well, what are their pillars? What are their assets? What are they built on in the public mind to be different? It's about having a point of difference, brands, and it's also about having a kind of a mental and emotional shortcut to trust. So when I see that brand, I think, great, I can trust them. Good old Vogel's bread. Love it. Great. I love it. Trust it. If they do something wrong, if they change their recipe, if they add an ingredient, Cadbury's is a great example. Years ago, they changed their production, not only to make the bar a little bit smaller, but they were using, in Cadbury's chocolate, they were using palm oil. And palm oil is one of those things that's very problematic globally. It can be very much associated with deforestation, destroying the orangutans. And now Cadbury's at the time had not secured a kind of ethical palm oil supply. They were just using the global palm oil, which was destroying the Amazon and other, so not just the Amazon, other places around the world. So they were boycotted. And Cadbury went from the most trusted and popular brand in New Zealand to one of the least trusted brands. So brands can do things wrongly, get things wrong. Now, that's what their brand managers say, let's not do that. That's not what our customers want. Let's do that. That's what our customers want. And so for Brand New Zealand, can I just say, let's not do genetic engineered releasing in the environment, because that's not what our customers want. They want clean, safe, non-GMO, GE-free food that they can trust. So let's do that.
Let's do that. Why not? If we've gone over this stuff already, John, we can always edit this out. But I've got the next question is, what is a brand? But we've kind of touched on that.
No, it's good. And you can always bring it up if you want to. I mean, so what is a brand? Well, in essence, a brand is basically a shortcut to trust. So instead of having to read all about where that company comes from, who established it, what they stand for, what they care about, what kind of products they make, what's in that product, you kind of get to it's a heuristic. It's a shortcut to say, I don't have to read it because I can trust Vogels, I can trust Air New Zealand. That plane's going to turn up. It's not some dodgy airline. Air New Zealand, I respect them. I know they're going to look after me. It's going to be a safe airline. Every brand, whatever the category, has got these impressions. We live in a world of impressions. You can say it's all about facts and figures, but actually impressions are almost as important. And impressions can backfire. So you can either have a positive impression or a negative impression. And a positive impression for Brand New Zealand today is being GE-free and clean and pure, even if we've got some problems with our environment from nitrates, etc. The future needs to maintain that and protect that, because that's the brand association globally. Now, where we're going with other things, you can have multiple brand faces. So I'm not against, developing, for example, the computer industry in New Zealand or the gaming industry in New Zealand. It doesn't mean you can't do these other things. I mean, even Rocket Lab, I'm not actually keen on that from a number of different angles. Again, our brand image is that we're peace-loving and isolated from warmongering and, that sort of thing. Whereas there's a risk that having rocket launches from New Zealand, especially if they're launching things that are to do with military, puts us into a different space. People aren't saying, oh, you're peace lovers. No, we're not. We're kind of part of a different system. So we've got to live up to, New Zealand's got a very strong reputation as nuclear free in terms of armaments and armament visits. That's always being threatened. Oh, no, it's time to get rid of that. Same with the GE free asset. we've got something, but they always say, oh, let's forget the GE free, let's forget the nuclear free. Well, no, let's not forget that, because that's part of our brand reputation. It's part of our point of difference in the market.
And who owns it?
Okay, so that's why it's interesting about Fonterra selling their brands, because literally on paper they do own those brands. They're copyrighted and registered, etc. But in terms of brand theory, it's the consumer that owns the brand, because without the consumer, without your customer, your brand means nothing. What have you got? If you haven't got any customers buying you, you haven't got anything. So you can have a brand and a label and a logo and some pillars for what you stand for, but if it doesn't connect with the consumer and they take ownership of it in some level, then you haven't got a brand. So I'd argue that the consumer owns the brand as much as the actual registered name on the pack.
Yeah, okay. And how does trust relate to Brand New Zealand?
Yeah. So if brands are about a shortcut to trust, Brand New Zealand has already got some associations that people trust us for, and it's long and it's growing. I mean, for example, we've already got this clean, green food export reputation. That's safe food when other countries may not be so safe. Burgeoning opportunity for Māori food. There's the Huia Paracore, organics, but anything to do with indigenous peoples has suddenly become something that globally consumers are starting to recognise as being authentic, as having its roots in nature or in community or other things that they value. So for Māori exporters from New Zealand, there's a real growing market for food grown with traditional overlays and values, not to mention the conventional food that New Zealanders are producing. We've got an issue here because there's a little bit about, brand New Zealand, well, it's just the organics people that need to be GE free. No, the whole of our production at the moment, apart from this imported animal feed, is GE free. And that is benefiting all producers and exporters from New Zealand. So that's why it's a brand asset, not just an organic thing. It's about New Zealand. And Brand New Zealand has got this huge advantage as being non-GMO, and that needs to be protected.
Do you think that would apply to conventional farmers just
Well,
the
that's
same?
what I'm saying. The conventional farmers are non-GMO in New Zealand. And so it's not just the organic people who are benefiting from the aura of Brand New Zealand's reputation. All farmers have benefited from it, which is very frustrating when they sell off their brands. And that was their point of difference. That was their shop window to the world. That could have been where they would be articulating that we're different from the stuff you get in the States, the stuff you get from China, the stuff you get from somewhere else. So very frustrating that they've missed that vision for Brand New Zealand. But they're only a small part of it. I know they're the big part, Fonterra, but New Zealand itself is much bigger than Fonterra.
Can you tell me about brand assets?
Yeah, so brand asset is one of these technical terms that it's like, what underpins your brand reputation and image, those impressions that people have of your brand. So, for example, a bank might be seen as, a Kiwi bank, a New Zealand owned. I mean, not that many of them are. It might be really friendly service. They're the ones that've got mobile mortgage managers that come and see you. Now, look, over the years, the other competitive bank will, we better get some of this. We better have mobile mortgage managers. So those assets are then diluted and become generic to the category. But so food safety, you could argue, is generic to all food. All food needs to be safe legally to be sold. But that doesn't really go to the heart of impressions. So you could sell that this product from, some dodgy part of America is safe, but is it what you want? Does it feel safe? And there's a terrible reality for MPs and business people who want money and logic. But there's an emotional aspect. It's not about logic. It's about impressions and about values and about feelings. And at the moment, people all over the world feel that New Zealand is a good place. They feel it's a safe place. They feel it's a healthy, natural place where food is and nature is valued, where cultural values like Māori are respected. Multicultural communities live in harmony. Our food is great tasting and great to give to guests, to buy in a New York restaurant, to serve in a London cafe. They want what New Zealand has got to offer. So I'm not sure what the question was, but I guess it's we got what the world wants, so let's protect that and keep it GE free.
Well, that's the thing. When I came to New Zealand, it was the thing that always rang around in my head is clean, green, 100% pure. And you have, if this gene tech bill gets back out, just to kind of come back to that, and we have contamination, which will be inevitable. You can't contain genetically modified organisms or gene edited organisms for that matter once they're out in the environment. So is it still 100% New Zealand, pure New Zealand, or is it 93%? Or, as time goes on, you can't really hold on to that point of difference as well, right?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's about slow dilution. It's about, can you have gene edited products in the environment coexistent with non-GMO? And the evidence says, no, you can't. You can at first. You can start off and say, well, just do it a little bit over here in this field. So, down the line, you won't have any contamination. And that's true. Down the line, as long as it's 100 kilometers away, you may not. But over time, if you don't corral it, if you don't contain it, if you don't control gene editing, if you don't keep it in the lab or keep it in containment in glass houses that are secure, you're going to get the spread of contamination. But which is why people are very angry about this bloody ryegrass, this GM ryegrass. There's a couple of them being developed by AgResearch and others, saying, we're going to stop climate change by giving, we're not going to shove the boluses down the cows' throats. We're going to feed them this new crop that's going to stop stop the methane coming up. Well, number one, existing hybrids of ryegrass can do this already. Existing mixed forage actually does it better than the trials have shown. And no one wants the GE ryegrass because once it's out there, as was revealed at the Select Committee, you can't have coexistence. If you have GE ryegrass, everyone gets GE ryegrass because it will spread. So saying no to that, saying no, we've got to hold on to our clean, green, natural, GE-free, non-GMO assets is fundamental. And so when it comes to the assets that are threatened by the gene technology bill, I guess I've identified like 6, I'm calling them 6 guardrails for brand New Zealand. And I'm really hoping that New Zealand First and the Greens and the Labour Party, I'm hoping ACT and National will adopt these guardrails and say, oh yeah, I get it now. We thought gene technology was great, but it's got some downsides. And now we can see the value of non-GMO. We want to try and navigate a middle path. So we keep it GE free, but we can use it in medicine. We can use genetic engineering in research ethically. And that's where my 6 kind of guardrails come up, and I'm hoping all parties will support those guardrails, specifically New Zealand First because they're in government, to say we will not pass this gene technology bill without these 6 guardrails.
Well, the Has No Act needs to be retained then, doesn't it? You can't bypass it, which is what that bill does, right?
Exactly. And there's lots of people saying, well, why did we not even consider fixing up Has No Act? Why adding things that people are saying are a problem and addressing them through that legislation, which has got the precautionary principle. Now, so let's go through the guardrails. So one of them is the precautionary principle. Precaution being a bit like a doctor not killing its patient by doing some experimental, medicine on that person. The precautionary principle is that if you're facing really clever technology, a really clever intervention into nature, and we're talking about nanotechnology, genetic engineering, synthetic biology, computer enhanced, protein development, all of transhumanism, eugenics. So there are a lot of things going on. So the precautionary principle has always been a backstop for the regulator to say, hey guys, I don't know that this isn't going to destroy us or destroy something very valuable in nature, or is really, really risky. So risky that I can't even calculate what the risk is. I can't get any insurance for it. The commercial people won't insure it. So I think I'm not going to approve it. That backstop has been in place. The new bill takes away the precautionary principle, so there is no backstop. There's nowhere with that regulator to go, hang on a minute, guys, you're so clever, guys, I can see it. You're so clever and driven by patenting to have this product. I want to stop it, and they won't be able to because they have to. And the other side of that is this mandatory approvals of not just medical uses of gene editing, but other products. The idea is that we align with overseas countries that have got a reasonable reputation, and if 2 of those countries say this medicine, this GE medicine, like a GE vaccine or something else, could be another product, is okay, is kosher, then we get it. We're going to have it rubber stamped by our regulator to say, yeah, we're going to accept that because you guys, I'll have what they're having. We don't want to have what they're having. We need to have real clear sovereignty and decisions made in the national interest for New Zealand. So that's the other pillar, is to not have automatic approvals through this regulator because somebody else has said it's okay. No, do our due diligence, have control and sovereignty in New Zealand, and certainly remove. There was a lot of alarms around one of the things in the bill talking about mandatory approvals of gene edited, emergency approvals of genetic engineering medicine, for example. It wasn't mandatory use of it. It wasn't saying, oh, not only are we going to approve it, but you're going to have it. And I think there's some good reasons why people might have thought, is that what it means? It doesn't mean that, but it doesn't mean it's not that. It doesn't say, there'll be no mandatory use. And the way the technology is going, I mean, they're talking about aerial spraying of gene editing elements, things that genetic and engineer things in the field. So it's no longer being done in the lab. The gene editor technology is in the field. Now, that could be done in medicine. You could be spraying cities with stuff. So there's a lot of, on the horizon, there's a lot of concerns about how these things will actually manifest in the real world. But that's why you need regulation. You can't exempt, for example, you can't do what this bill does, exempt a whole lot of gene edited products saying, oh, they're so similar to nature, even though they don't exist. So how similar to nature are they? We don't know. But we're going to assume they're going to be similar to nature, so we're not going to regulate them. We're not going to allow you to label them. You're not going to require you to label them. And we're not going to tell you, so you have a choice. Now, that's what the food authorities did with this thing called P1055. That was actually passed, that they actually passed it, that was signed off by our minister to say, you're not going to be labeling these products because we don't think you need to know. Outrageous. The other thing that's happening recently, and it just closed the other day, they want to do a trial of QR codes on packaging. So instead of having a product labelled with the information, and this is all about importing food and allowing new supermarkets to enter New Zealand more cheaply. And the supermarkets have said it was really expensive to relabel products that might be from overseas with the labelling that meets your requirements. Sorry, guys, that is a cost of business. That's like, oh, we don't want to have staff, so we're getting rid of our staff. No, you have to have staff. You have to have the labelling in place, so when someone's at the shop, they can see what's on the product. To remove it and put it behind a code, a barrier code, an electronic code, or a website that you have to use your phone to go and visit, is a huge imposition on the public. I said in my submission that even one death from this trial will be one death too many. If someone just happens to not see that there was an allergen in this product because it's hidden behind a QR code that they forgot or didn't have time to check, and they ended up using that product at home, and their child or they themselves get ill, someone's responsible. And I'd put it right at the head. I'd put it at the minister who's allowed this trial to go ahead, if they do. And I'd put it on the doorstep of any of the retailers, whether that's Woolworths or Foodstuffs, or whoever's going to be part of this trial to have just QR codes, not proper labelling. They're going to be as guilty as the government for allowing this trial to go ahead, if they allow this trial to go ahead. I'm not against QR codes. I'm not against the future technology. Yeah, we'll be able to use our phones to do so much more. Find out about the background. Find out about the farmer who grew that food. But basic information about allergens needs to be on the product. So all of these kind of innovations that government is looking about, whether it's GE, whether it's removing labelling of gene-edited food so people don't know, whether it's removing actual labelling on foods to QR codes so people can't have easy access to allergenic information or ingredients or country of origin, all of those things are backward steps for what I would say was an asset for Brand New Zealand, which was transparency and honesty and being a fair player. All of those things are removing transparency and removing honesty and not being a fair player. So the other assets of Brand New Zealand would be the clean green. I think, it's very strongly our point of difference. Te Ao Māori as being part of the landscape and culture here is a very important point of difference, again, for Brand New Zealand, that's been a bit underplayed over the years. But going back to the pillars that are threatened by the Gene Technology Bill, another one is ethics. So I would say, even though we grow animals and kill them and for beef and etc. We've got a reputation for being at least not the worst industrial farmers of cruelty like the Americans and the Argentinians have. The feedlots, animals kept inside. There are people who wanted to do that in New Zealand. They may even be doing it in the South Island already. Oh, let's have a feedlot in New Zealand. Totally against our brand reputation. Shouldn't have been allowed. But ethics is part of the kind of thing that New Zealand owns globally. I'm not quite sure where it comes from. It may come from the nuclear-free stand that really said, hang on, we don't want nuclear weapons down this end of the world after what we've seen. Ethics goes all the way through to things like, whether you like it or not. Jacinda Ardern talking about kindness at the time of the mosque attacks. I mean, that showed, it modelled something different from normal politics in other countries. It showed that New Zealand had a bit more heart, a bit more community. So all of these things are part of the ethical lens that, again, is completely missing in the Gene Technology Bill. There is no ethics. We had established until a few years ago a bioethics council to guide things like human genes being used in animals, eugenics, creating ideal humans by fiddling with their genes. All of these things need to be part of oversight and regulation. They're not in the Gene Technology Bill. So that's another pillar. Bring it back, New Zealand First. Bring it back, Greens, Labour, Nats, ACT. Bring back ethics into the Gene Technology Bill. It's gone missing in action, and it's part of brand New Zealand's reputational assets.
Way too loose. Any more on those assets, Jon?
Well, I'm just thinking about
sovereignty and control.
We've talked about sovereignty and control, leaving the decisions here for brand New Zealand. We've talked about ethics. We've talked about the precautionary principle. We've talked a little bit about, maintaining choice, having that labelling, having any imported gene-edited food labelled so people know it's not being sold underneath the counter. I would like ethics. It's a mixture of ethics and honesty and allowing people choice. I'd love to see Woolworths and Foodstuffs, New World, absolutely committing to disclosing gene-edited food if it comes in through imports into New Zealand, and absolutely labelling voluntarily gene-edited food, like if there's anything grown or vegetables or fruit allowed for sale in New Zealand, it needs to be disclosed. Because let's be really clear, it's not been the legislation that's really slowed genetic engineering and GMOs in New Zealand. It's been the market. And the market has said they don't want GMOs in New Zealand. So New Zealanders have been lulled to a bit of a sense of security, false sense. Well, it wasn't a false sense of security until this year. We had no GMOs grown in New Zealand, apart from some animal feed. We were GE-free. We're marketing to the world as clean, green, natural, GE-free. Now this bill's come along and it risks taking away that honesty, that truth. And for me, the Woolworths and the foodstuffs need to recognise that their supermarkets, so their customers have come to their shop knowing that when they're buying a New Zealand vegetable or an apple or celery or whatever it is, that it's GE-free because it's been grown in New Zealand. That needs to be still the case. People need to know that their food is GE-free. And if it's not, I don't want it to be. I don't want it to become contaminated and gene-edited. But if it is to be gene-edited, well, by Zespeak thinking it's a great idea, or by Woolworths wanting to do some new product, they need to be honest. The most recent example of confusion was around a tierless onion that was launched by Woolworths, which I got a call from a journalist saying, "Hey guys, this is a GE onion." I said, "Well, no, it's not. It's been conventionally bred." Oh, really? Yes, go and ask Woolworths. And they contacted Woolworths and said, "Oh yeah, no, it's not GMO. It's not gene edited. It's conventionally bred." Now, that kind of confusion, Woolworths should have nipped that in the bud. They should have had a little logo saying GMO free on it. So say, it's not been fiddled with, guys. So I think there'll be a lot more labelling of products as non-GMO. There's the gfreepolicy.com website, and that's about supporting companies to say we're making best efforts to keep GE out, contamination out. But there's always a risk of contamination coming in from overseas because we're allowed imports of products. But we've held the line so well that maintaining the right to choose is how the market has kept GMOs out, and maintaining the right to choose into the future is how we'll keep a non-GMO, GE-free food system in place for people to have a choice of. The final pillar is, just let me get there, it's about protection. It's about protection of the GE-free production system in New Zealand, which is all of it. Oh, hang on, you've got some animal feed, some nasty stuff being imported as cheap feed for chickens and some for pigs and etc. That should stop. Hey guys who work in the pig industry and the chicken industry, hey Teagles guys, hey farmers, stop using distillers grain that's likely to be GMO. Stop using all the bad stuff and get back to what people think our cows are eating, which is grass, natural grass, and that's what we sell it on. So stop fiddling around, stop undermining your authenticity as a clean, green, safe, natural food producer. Live up to it. And that's the trajectory. That's the strategy. That's the debate I want to have with Christopher Luxon. That's the strategy for New Zealand. And then you put in your science funding, you put in your investment and your regional development around that strategy. At the moment, it's, oh, come on, businesses from overseas, can come and do to us so we can get your money. Not good enough.
This whole push around innovation really, to me, just looks like a kind of a proxy word for patents, right?
That's certainly the driving force. So let's be really clear. We've known for years that giving cows mixed forage will reduce methane, maximise production, meet our brand reputation as clean and green and natural. But you can't patent it. But instead, they've been investing in the GEH grass, or they're doing other stuff to say, oh, this is going to be the solution, and they're going to clip the ticket. I think this is a bigger issue than just Brand New Zealand, actually. This is about global trajectories to address global issues. Now, whatever your view of climate change is, I think the one view that we can all agree on is that the technical fixes that are being proposed as, oh, you've got to eat the insects and you've got to grow your food in the lab to solve climate change are not the solution. The solutions, if climate change is the issue of the day, then we grow mixed forage, we diversify, you create resilience in multiple agroecological and organic growing systems. Resilience, diversity, heritage seeds, the opposite of patenting, control, contamination, no choice. That's where we're sitting.
Well, I'll add to that as well. Still speculative, unproven long term.
Oh, yes. I mean, I don't know whether you ever read an insurance advertising, but or investment advertising. It says, past profits don't necessarily represent future profits. Okay. Well, that's true of today. So gene technology and what they envisage might have some benefits. And I certainly think it might have benefits in contained use, ethical use, medical uses, research, marker-assisted breeding, where you're using it to look at genes but not actually changing the genes. So there's a whole lot of good science that can be done. But the issue for the future is that if you don't keep the G-free, non-GMO system in place, New Zealand loses its unique point of difference. It's not completely unique. There's a lot of countries that haven't taken up GMOs, but the reason to protect it is because the promises 20 years ago and 10 years ago and 15 years ago are also not delivered for GMOs. So if you go to America and you look at what they've got, they haven't got any climate-saving products growing. They've got products that can be sprayed with Roundup and glyphosate and increase your exposure to them. They've got some other products which pump out an insecticide but then cause resistance in insects. So you have to put more other pesticides on the crops. None of these things have come to all these promises from 20 years ago. So I guess what my message is, okay, we're getting new promises this year and in the future. Don't necessarily believe them. They are all based on investment hype, patenting, and getting some money in. I saw a program the other day. It's called Food Inc. 2. It's a movie from America about the food industry there. And they had an interview with the guy. I think it was the Impossible Burger. It might have been someone else. It may have been Beyond Meat. So one of the new entrepreneurs. And he was saying, oh, yeah, it was a chicken. He was making fake chicken. And they gave the journalist a piece of chicken and said, oh, look, this is what we can make. In fact, the journalist said, hang but that wasn't made in the vats. It was being made in a different way. The guy said, oh, we're hoping to get the cost of the chicken, the lab-grown chicken, down to something affordable sometime in the next 10 years. 10 years to get it to get fake chicken affordable to the consumer. I mean, this is not a proposition that any business. I mean, take it into the den and say no thanks. You've already had all these years, and you want another 10 years to say, oh yes, just keep on giving us the money to do these vats, and we'll get it down to a cost affordable product. No.
No.
So don't believe the hype. That's what I'm saying. We've got something that They're underhyping the natural GE3, and they're overhyping the prospects of the future. But so far, in America and other parts of the world, it's all hype. There's nothing that I would. One of the chief advocates for genetic engineering says, "Oh, yes, there is. Look at the Impossible Burger. They sell it at a premium. It's not discounted, cheap, nasty GMOs. They actually make a premium." Well, in New Zealand, they stopped using the GMO soy as the main ingredient because people didn't want it. So they're not even using GMO soy. And the other example that this guy gave is, and in Bangladesh, they've got this brinjal, this eggplant, and that's not sold at a discount, it's sold at a premium. Well, that all dodgy data, and no one knew what the product was. So if these are the two examples of why New Zealand should give up its GE3 asset and marketing advantage to the world, growing at double digits globally for non-GMO food, and we're going to give it up because one of the advocates from the biotechnology industry, who's got some money in the game himself, patents or interests, is saying, there's this Pakistani brinjal that proves we should give up our brand asset and go GE. Sorry, guys. No.
And I just want to hit the point home with the ryegrass, the ag research, because even Christopher Luxon's pushing that. It's going to be like some game changer. That grass will be... You can't contain grasses. They will go everywhere. And then there's an example in the US where you got that Scots Triffid grass that escaped the field test plots. And I think it went over like 100 kilometres. It's still going now. Yes. It's completely uncontainable.
It's, bent grass, I think it's called.
So anyone, not just organic producers, who will be very concerned about that because that will contaminate their grass that their grazing livestock are eating. But even for conventional, it's still going to contaminate your farm. So it just raises all these many questions. There's so many risks that are not being addressed. All the unintended consequences are being ignored in light of all the evidence overseas and what we can learn from there. And also the point of there's no economic analysis to support it. And I find that very strange because the risk impacts to the brand, our economy, which is foundational as a food exporter. We're an export-driven nation. So the glaring risks in front of us. Do you find it highly unusual that they did not do an economic impact assessment on that? It does seem strange.
So to cut a long answer short, yes, very, very unusual to do something to New Zealand or propose doing something to New Zealand that could actually decimate our export industry. When you come into the country, you have to make sure you haven't got any oranges given to you by some poor air hostess on the plane. Oh, she gave it to me, now you can have it. We've got biosecurity in place for really good reasons, and yet the gene technology bill deregulates a whole lot of unknown gene edited. As long as there's only a little change gene edited, they don't even care. I mean, it's not a numbers game, genetic engineering. You can change one gene or one code and it can have an enormous effect. You can change loads of codes and have no effect. So every case needs to be looked at. So they've taken away case by case, bring it back. They've taken away oversight of these new gene edited products that are kind of only a little bit of a change, bring it back. The whole thing is going on the wrong direction already. But this gene technology bill would really take it to the next level for New Zealand. So the final pillar that I don't think we've touched on, because it goes to the heart of the matter. This is all about money. This is all about what a consumer is willing to reach into their purse in America to buy because it's from New Zealand. And that's what I'm arguing for. They're buying New Zealand, and we must protect that because that's what our economy relies on. So one of the things missing from this legislation, the gene technology bill, is liability. Liability on the people doing the stuff, doing it. If they're allowed to do it, they've got to be liable for contaminating another person's farm. They've got to be liable for causing injury. And at the moment, there's no liability clause in the bill. The Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, look it up. He made a submission to the Select Committee, dodgy Select Committee. When I say dodgy, a complete sham. Maybe not a sham, sorry, that's a bit unfair because they didn't mean to be a sham, but it turned out to be a sham. It certainly was a failure of courage of all of those MPs, not just the ones that you can call out like ACT and National who are pushing this bill, but New Zealand First and the Greens and Labour and Māori Party should have all got next to the other government parties and said, hey guys, this is an F up. We cannot proceed with this bill. Stop it. Send it back. Let's have all of these is issues that have been raised by submissions reviewed and put back into the bill, because we've been shafted. The Select Committee was shafted, being handed a bill that was written by industry for industry, and then everyone says, hey, there's a lot of problems in here, and they go, oh, what do you mean problems? Let's just carry on, everyone. And they've sent it back to Parliament. Absolutely ridiculous thing to do. But so you can use a sham, betrayal, failure. But one of the things they didn't do, and I think this is really, I'm being very pointed about this, the Parliamentary Commission for the Environment said this bill transfers a whole lot of risks from the biotechnology industry to the public, to nature, to exporters, to communities, to ratepayers. You need to introduce civil liability. They haven't done that. So again, amongst all those pillars that I'm hoping New Zealand First and every political party will stand up for, I'm hoping strict liability on the user, so the polluter pays. If they contaminate a New Zealand export to America and we lose millions of dollars of exports, someone needs to be responsible for that. Number one, it shouldn't happen. Come on, Christopher Luxon, defend brand New Zealand now. But if you do fail to do that, the people, if that's the future, I don't want that future, but if that's the future, then the person planting those crops and contaminating our exports, contaminating nature, needs to be responsible.
Yes, I agree. So where's the bill at now? If just we can update people, where are we at? Where are we looking to?
So as I say, the Select Committee didn't have any courage collectively to say, stop this bill. It needs to go back into rewriting. It needs to have these basic things like ethics, precaution, choice, protection of our exports, and economic analysis done. They haven't done that. So it's gone back into Parliament for its second reading. It's low down on the order list paper. So basically, every day, enough conversation will happen to go through some of the bills that are on the list. It's number 30 at the moment. So there's a lot of other conversations happen before they get to the gene technology bill, unless they change it. So at the moment, Parliament's in recess until the end of January. That's when this will all pick up again. We need to be very alert as to what they do in Parliament when they come back. If they've moved the gene technology bill up to something that's going to be read in the next few weeks or months, then we need to know what's in that bill. And we need to be asking New Zealand First, hey guys, what have you won? For this bill to be actually going to its second reading, not down the list, never going to be spoken about, but actually up the list, about to be spoken in Parliament about, then we need to be sure that New Zealand First has won the changes it needs to win, which is we've got to have precaution. We've got to have the right to choose. We've got to protect the non-GMO, GE-free export advantage. We've got to hold those users of the gene technology liable. All of those pillars need to be back in the bill. Otherwise, it cannot pass. So New Zealand First has Winston Peters has committed to not allowing this bill to pass unless those protections and the safety issue that their concerns have been raised about is addressed. That's what we need to look out for. If they're not addressed, New Zealand First cannot vote for this bill and it will not pass. If they are addressed, they need to be addressed effectively. And that's what this whole conversation's been about. At the end of the day, we need to protect the pillars that protect our economy. And those pillars are brand New Zealand's clean, green, ethical, sustainable, GE-free, non-GMO, Māori, kind of harmonious community, approachable, fair-minded, those sort of things. That needs to be part of our brand identity moving forward.
Well, we will retain that going forward, I feel. Yeah,
and bring it on. If anyone knows how to get a debate organised about brand New Zealand with Christopher Luxon, I'll be happy to debate him because he's the Prime Minister of New Zealand. So someone needs to be managing brand New Zealand. And if it's not him, it needs to be the people beneath him.
Well, there are hard questions that need to be asked, and I feel that he needs to face these questions because they are being ignored at the moment, and it doesn't seem very democratic to be. This feels imposed on people, this bill. I feel that way. It's been imposed on us. We've had this Health Select Committee process. 97% of the people were against it strongly. I've watched most of them submissions. I know how negative they were, and it's still gone through to that second reading anyway. So do the right thing is my thought on that. Do the right thing by New Zealand.
Yeah. Well, do the right thing by New Zealand to make sure that people carry on buying New Zealand.
Yeah, the all-important point, yeah. Anything else, John?
No, as I say, I'd love to have a debate with Christopher Luxon about protecting brand New Zealand's GE-free, non-GMO advantage. It's worth billions of dollars. Come on, Chris, let's have a debate.
Do you think he will?
Maybe.
Maybe. Do you think he'll go back on Jack Tame?
Maybe.
He's avoided that Q&A, I've noticed.
Look, it's a hard life being a politician, especially when you're the top guy. But that brings responsibilities. And so, whether he has the debate with me or not, whether he goes back on Jack Tame or not, come on, Christopher Luxon, you've got some experience in branding. Brand Air New Zealand, brand New Zealand, they're a bit of a Venn diagram. They overlap. And if you can remember the values of Air New Zealand, it's about caring for your customers, doing the right thing, going beyond the basics and doing the extras. Now, I would say protecting GE-free New Zealand's export advantage is going beyond, because at the moment, they're being told by whatever powers globally and locally, you're going to have GE, as you say. It's being forced onto New Zealand. We've got to fight back. We've got to protect our assets. We've got to protect our point of difference. GE-free New Zealand.
Yeah, it's ours to fight for, ours to lose. So what can people do now? There's not really much we can do.
Keep watching, stay connected with, I love the work GE Honesty is doing. GE-free New Zealand's doing, press releases and updating people regularly. In fact, a lot of organizations seem to have become very aware that kind of wherever you sit on the whole gene editing and genetic engineering debate, there's some bottom lines that we've got to maintain for everybody. And as I think you said, it's not just the organics, it's not just the conventional producers. It's not just our exporters, and it's not just the consumers at Woolworths and at Pack and Save and New World. We all benefit from a safe, secure, non-GMO food supply. We benefit as a consumer choice or benefit as an exporter into the world market. But there's a benefit. It's a shared benefit. It's a shared asset. So no one owns it. No one has the right to throw it away and throw New Zealand under the bus. But that's what this gene technology bill will do unless it gets changed or stopped. At the moment, it's paused. As I say, let's look for the changes. If it hasn't got the precautionary principle, if it hasn't got liability on the GMO users, if it hasn't got protection of GE-free production and the natural environment, if it hasn't got the right to choose and labelling and bring back the labelling of these new gene editing products that have been removed, and if it hasn't got ethics and values, because that's what brands are all about. What do you stand for? What do you care about? What does New Zealand care about? What do we stand for? And at the moment, the Gene Technology Bill is a direct threat to all of that today.
So anyone listening, if you want to follow us, GE Honesty, or the great work of GE-free New Zealand, you're an amazing resource. So what is it?
ge-free.org.nz.
And heaps of articles, commentary, and you break down the sort of claims of the biotech industry. Anything else I should mention as far as?
No, I guess you don't have to be going to all our websites. Just ask your supermarket manager, hey, are you going to stand up for our rights to choose? And are you going to label GMOs if they start coming into New Zealand? Because at the moment, they would be labelled. That's why there's not a lot of GMOs and gene-edited products on the shelves. With these recent changes to take away labelling, then the supermarkets have to step up as well as Christopher Luxon.
Yeah. So it's in the order paper. It'll likely be January would be the best guess, but we can't really tell when.
End of January, they return to Parliament. Then we have to see where is it on the order paper. If it goes up the order paper, it's going to be discussed in Parliament. That's when we need to be absolutely aware of what is going to be in this bill. It may still not get passed, and I hope that if it's not fixed with these 6 pillar changes that I'm arguing for, if New Zealand First has not won that debate, they will vote against it, and this bill will not pass.
So we've got a bit of breathing room over Christmas.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Look, I love it. When you go and bite that strawberry, it's a non-GMO strawberry. It's from New Zealand. When you go and eat that, whatever it is you're eating at Christmas, if it's grown in New Zealand, it's GM-free. If it's a good quality product, whether it's a chicken or a lamb or pork, if it's good quality, it will be non-GMO. Stuff being imported from overseas, hidden in our food system, that's part of the tragedy of the way that governments have taken our food system. Food is being we're importing pork, we're importing chicken. It's a crazy world we're in, mate. But if you can, it's back to brands. If you're buying a brand you can trust, and hopefully you can trust that brand, then you're getting natural, healthy, clean, safe New Zealand food.
Love it. Okay. Thanks for coming on, Jon.
Thank you.